We are recording, I think. Hi, Danielle.
Hello, Mary Love.
Hello. All right, so we are going to check out TSP day 1, correct?
Sounds great.
Awesome. Okay. So I have it up on the screen. Can you see it?
I cannot.
Maybe, oh, you know why I stopped sharing my screen? That would be a problem. There we go. Is that better?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, now we can start. Okay, welcome to TSP day 1. So here's kind of what we anticipate they'll do when they walk in the door. Very similar to CCI. And then just to make sure they access that presentation. So that's easy. Also, just in case this may or may not be handy, I've tried to make a list of all the posters and stuff that we're going to need to make.
Okay,
so
perfect.
If we miss it, let's point that out as we go along, like speed things up later.
That's great.
Okay, so we go from that's their entry routine, and then this is TSP. And the housekeeping things are the same as we've done in CCI, so I think those can probably stay the same. We will, in our case, I think have to be zooming this out for our train the trainers. So we'll need to make sure and talk about the streaming just so folks know that we are streaming. And the only thing that we've said to our participants about the streaming is just that because we will be wearing the microphones and they obviously don't have the microphones. When they ask a question or if they give a response to something, you and I would have to do kind of a pretty good job at repeating what they say so that the folks watching can hear it.
Okay, gotcha.
Sometimes we have handheld mics, and that works, but it kind of just depends on the group.
I gotcha. And when we do it, Mary, we're going to have all 3 rooms, right?
Yes. Yes, that's going to be fun.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. And also we should have Adrienne England with us during a portion of this day as well. So I'm going to get in touch with her, and with 3 rooms, she should be able to have her own mic as well, which will be nice to help keep it all clean and stuff. So that's good.
So logistic wise, since I wasn't at CCI, just you and I will just spread out. Is that basically how you guys have done it?
Yes, pretty much. My thinking, and we can go get in the rooms and kind of take a look, is that somebody would probably stand between 324 and 325, and somebody else would stand between 324 and 323.
Perfect.
And then that morning of, we will have to adjust the camera. So we'll pretty much have the camera focused on one spot. And then you and I, once presenters kind of pick what sections they are, we'll just kind of have to exit that. Like if I'm done presenting and you're going to take over, I'm going to leave via one path and you're going to hop in the camera view.
Yes, ma'am. Got it.
And we'll just kind of swap. That makes sense?
Yes, ma'am.
Cool. You're funny with your ma'ams.
I know, I've been using it lately. Yes, ma'am.
I like it. It's fun. I'm going to use it too. Okay. So then we have a little inspirational video from the kid president, just to get folks excited for the day. And then this is just a fun way for us to do some minor introductions, but then also to assign their table partners. And we just reference them as table partners. Sometimes it's a group of 3. Just depends on when everybody gets in, sits down, and they're like groups.
So is that a teaching piece that we need to show them who their table partners are?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So when they come in, here we go, like on the very first screen, where they sit at a table that best describes your teaching assignment, we have these table tents that are made up.
Got it.
And so the way it worked in the past, you could do it however you want, is we kind of had secondary people, like if I'm facing the crowd, they were to the right, elementary was to the left-ish, and then we had all our specialized programs toward the back, which made it a little bit easier for our EPSs to jump in and support those people.
Got it.
But then, of course, we just made adjustments to the table tents, and the color coding made it a lot simpler to start partnering up or getting groups of 3s together.
Okay.
And once they're assigned, they're the same all day.
Great.
So basically this part right here where we introduce ourselves, and then we assign the groups. And then they would do this activity with that partner.
Got it.
Cool?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Awesome. Then we'll go into the expectation or the expected outcomes for the day,
Okay.
which are just these right here. Just kind of talk through those. And then just so you know, and for any presenter presenting, because on day 2, you know, we have to collect all the data.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So ClickUp will give us the first outcome. We have a Google form on day 1 and again on day 2. And I actually want to ask if you think we need it on day 1. We could probably just do it on day 2. I'll show you. But it's a Google form. And then this third one is a consensogram that we do on day 2. And then they'll have their action plans completed also on day 2.
Okay. Okay.
And then we will roll through. This is our required slide. They've already seen it twice. So probably a quick summary of why we are choosing classroom learning systems is probably all that's needed here. Along with just the books and reminding them that they already have this one. Today we're starting to work with this one. And then classroom performance excellence kind of makes up the trifecta, but SSD really hangs in these first 2 in terms of the foundational pieces for classroom learning systems.
Yes.
Cool. Then we have our little Venn diagram, which they also saw in CCI, but then just kind of explaining that we're going to dive more deeply into each of these components today. It's less about like the steps now. CCI was all about the steps, but now in TSP, it's more about the connections and how we're pulling key partners in and making this an effective system. So we'll be diving more deeply.
Okay.
Cool. Okay. So then we kind of get into just that review of a systems approach. So a systems approach, and then again, just reiterating that this is less about the steps 1 through 8. This is all about the system, and that we're basing things on these organizational best practices.
Okay.
Which they are going to think we're crazy because they've never heard that term before, and that's like the first chunk of learning that we're going to do today.
Okay.
Okay. So then we dive into an activity where they are, do you remember that format from CCI to TSP document? It's been used in the past, but that's what we're using here.
Okay.
They can get to it through this link, and we'll have paper copies that we can give them to.
Okay. So do we need to make copies of that?
Yes. I got that one.
You got that on your list?
You. So basically, they're just going to read through it as an independent activity first. And then they're going to take this short self-assessment right here. And the purpose of the self-assessment is really just to help us realize what people are feeling confident with, what questions are still out there for the day. The next slide will take us to the results. So we can give them a minute to do the survey, click on the results, kind of go through them. And that's really just for us to know where to spend our time.
Right.
Cool. Okay. So there's the Google form. And then we can point out the consensogram that will be just up on the wall. And this really kind of opens the discussion to talk about quality tools again and for us to show which quality tools we're using.
Great.
Yep. So the purpose here is to really just say, like, you know, you used a consensogram for CCI to get pre and post data, but for this training, we're only using it for post data. So we'll use it on day 2, but it's still up there.
Perfect.
And then this slide just kind of goes over some of the other tools that we'll be using throughout the day.
Right. You updated, and that we talked about this with TSP day 2, to do a similar thing to highlight those tools. Okay.
Yep. And one of the things that at some point in this presentation they talk about is like an activity bank to help engage folks throughout the process.
Okay.
And so I was toying with that idea of just having, like, to start the day with basically a blank poster that we call like our activity bank, And then as we do activities throughout the day, we add to our list. So they
Oh,
have a
cool.
good visual kind of real time. Like we could automatically put up a Google form. We can pretty much put up a consensogram, all that good stuff.
So would that be at this time, we would go over and start putting these on the poster, or would you wait until we used it within the course and then put it on?
I would think that this would be a good time to start filling it in, like to show what it is. And like we already used the form, we put Google form. We showed you a consensogram, we add consensogram.
Got it.
Just a thought.
I
So
like
we can
that.
see how it rolls. But that would just be a poster that we could even make that day, but it's short and simple.
Great.
Cool. Okay. So from there, so that kind of covers the quality tools. This is the part where I was wondering if we need this. So after we talk about quality tools, there's another Google form, which we could use. It's a one question or form.
Okay.
And it really addresses that outcome that talks about the parts, connections, and practices, and do they understand how they make up a high-performing classroom learning system? We had a very similar outcome in CCI.
Okay.
So this is not drastically new information, but the way that it gets linked together through linkage diagrams and whatnot, I think that visual is still going to be, even though they've seen it, I still think it's pretty new. So they can go to this link and get the Google form, and it's literally one question. My thought process initially was, no, this is the results page, but it's this one question. Whoops. I understand the parts, connections, and practices, and they, in lieu of another consensogram, they would rate themselves one of these 4 ways. And then on the responses, we should see a nice pie graph to show us like they get it or they don't.
Okay.
We just did a Google form that gave us similar information, not exactly this information, but similar. The data we really need for the outcome is the post data. So I didn't know what your thought processes were in terms of keeping, this might be helpful for us to, again, help us know where to spend our time.
But we already have a tool built in to do that.
A little bit. The questions, yeah, the questions are more geared toward the CCI TSP connection, but yeah.
Okay, I got you. Where are you at with it? What are your thoughts?
I'm kind of wondering, since we've already done a Google form,
yeah,
if this is something we could more or less talk about, because we have kind of addressed it already earlier. And then, but do this on day 2 as the post data for our objective.
Okay, I got you.
Be my thinking.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. I think the question I was trying to wrestle with in my head was, is it just the tool we want to change, or is this process needed at this time? So, you know, if we didn't want to use a Google form, could we use another poll or something different to still do it? Or is this an activity we feel like we cover in another way?
It might be helpful if we go back to this self-assessment they take on the CCI to TSP, and let's take a look at those questions specifically. Okay. Is that okay?
That's great.
Okay, so how well have you implemented the 8 steps? Which ones have you completed well? So we'd be able to scan the results there.
Okay.
What areas do you still have questions? So we'd be able to see those results there. And then what do you want to improve on? So in terms of telling us where to spend more time with the presentation, I feel like this form would give us a lot of that information.
Okay.
In terms of like a quick, clear-cut answer to the objective, the other form I think is going to do that. But we don't need that till day 2.
Perfect. Okay, sounds good.
What are your thoughts?
Sounds great. Yep.
Good.
Yep. That makes sense. Thanks for explaining it to me that way.
Just my thinking. I don't know. My thinking could be wrong. Okay, let's just hide it for now. And if we feel like we need to go back to it, we always can.
Perfect.
Okay. Okay, so in that case, we would go through talking about the quality tools and then introducing them to their first bit of learning for the day, which is the organizational best practices.
Great.
And they got to read through those for a couple minutes. And then we are going to do a modified version of this activity, whereas in the past they would like do these card sorts and stuff, which is I think how we learned it. But now we have a quizzes that'll do the same thing. So they click the link, join the game. They kind of they read these situations and decide if it's consistent or inconsistent.
Okay.
And they have a scorecard that Jamie's already made.
Oh, wow.
So that they can kind of score themselves as they go throughout the presentation.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And if they need, their answers are here too. So if they need to go back and score themselves, they can.
Oh, cool.
Which would lead them then into a table talk.
Okay.
And then a chance to share out with a large group.
Awesome. All right. So for share outs, are you're doing a whip around and taking everybody? Are you getting just a few or?
That's a good question. Let's see what our time ordered agenda has to say. So table work with the quizzes, and they can stretch at that point. I don't think we necessarily verified at that time how we would do the whole group share out.
Okay.
It could be anything we want. It could certainly be a whip around, or it could be like an airplane stack. Like I want to hear from 3 people.
Okay. Okay.
Kind of a thing.
We could feel it out. So for day 2, I'm going to go in and put the little icon in to kind of indicate any kind of standing break, movement break. Do you want me to do the same for day 1?
That'd be a great idea. Yeah, that'd be awesome. Thank you. So that would be the thought here, is that they could stand, they could stretch, they could kind of have this conversation, share out with a large group. And then there's just a chance for a very short tabletop conversation that helps them kind of prioritize 2 of those organizational best practices that they want to put in place in their classroom.
Okay, great.
Cool. Okay, so from there, I'm going to kind of do a present thing because these slides look real funny like that.
Okay.
So this basically breaks down the original linkage diagram that they saw. So it kind of starts with just a review of like, we learned this from CCI, the teacher is the leader. They work with their learning requirements and they write the long-term goals. And, you know, we just kind of talk through each of it like that so that the students and staff can be co-producers of learning and really support that PDSA process. And they do that by looking at the data, long-term data, short-term PDSA data. All these notes are in there.
Great. Okay.
And then everything sits on the organizational best practices that they just learned about.
Okay. I got to get myself more familiar with this slide. So I'll look through those notes and review that. I just got to get that to be a little bit more automatic.
Yeah, I feel like these next like 4 slides I feel like these are going to be ones that as presenters, we're going to really have to be careful with how we present them so that they don't become like an overwhelming, scary thing.
Yeah.
And more of almost a confidence booster. Like all of that they learned already. That's good.
That's a good point. Okay.
And like this linkage diagram, they've seen it already. So like if this is clicking a little bit, this is why we looked at this on day 1. We're just adding this idea of organizational best practices here.
Okay, great.
Cool. So that's kind of important because at this point, so like kind of build their confidence. So these are all the pieces that we've learned already. Today, we're gonna take it one step further, and we're gonna really start to think of those same components, but through another lens, as we're starting to bring in our key partners and make this more of an integrated system versus those separated steps. And this slide actually does a lot of fly-ins as well, I think. Yep. So when they see it, it comes like open. It comes with this just kind of blanket full of just arrows.
Okay.
So this is our chance using the notes are pretty good, I think, to just give short descriptors of each one. But just remember, so today we're talking about that system, and it starts with the leadership. As we talk about our customers, those folks that have that are invested in the learning and the success of our systems, and just kind of moving on to the long-term goals and the PDSA and how we're having our students and blah, blah, blah. Whoops. The notes are I think the notes are pretty good when it just will help a lot with just kind of giving those brief overviews, just saying how the foundational skills are going to support this amount of new learning. And if all goes well, if we do this right, we will end up with the students being able to lead their own learning. So this linkage diagram is all about the student. This is kind of where ideally we want to be.
Okay.
So I do think these slides will be kind of important, but if we just go by the notes, we should be pretty cool.
Okay.
And then at the end of this one, they kind of get a chance to breathe, and they can go to the Jamboard and answer this question. In what ways are you providing opportunities for students to lead their own learning? Blanket statement, no wrong answers. Go to the Jamboard, start popping in ideas. And I feel like this can be a really great way to celebrate a lot of good work. So while this might be kind of like an intense moment, sometimes I feel like it is for participants, I think we're going to end it on a pretty positive note.
That's awesome.
Cool. And take a break. So, that's good.
Good.
Okay. So far, so good?
Yes.
Cool. Okay.
Yep.
So then we come back from break, and we're going to talk to them a little bit about the TSP book itself, because it is organized differently than their CCI book is.
Okay.
So there's this idea of a self-assessment section and the action step section. So if they want, they can tab their book. And depending on time, this can be something we give them a few minutes to do, or it could be something that we say on your next break, feel free to come back here and tab your book if this would be helpful to you. But those are the page numbers. And on each of those pages, they are going to do a self-assessment for each of those components. So this is just teaching them how to do that.
Okay, so we're pre-teaching that routine that they're going to keep seeing throughout the presentation.
Totally. Yep. This is the rating scale, and they self-assess.
Okay.
Cool. Well, that one's kind of easy. A point that I might offer, I don't know if it's in the notes. Okay, it's in the notes right here. So we have offered them a learning log for the day, and we purposefully did not call it an action plan like we did for CCI.
Okay.
The learning log is strictly if people want to take notes. Their notes might help them with the action plan because there's a separate section in the book, like they'll kind of pre-assess, and then at the end of the learning for that section, they actually make an action step that they want to do. The notes can help with that, but it's optional. Does that make sense?
Okay.
So I just wanted to clarify because people got a little confused in CCI. Okay. So then on slide 38, we dive into the first section, which is customer focus. We point out the connections right here with the standards, and just kind of this is also a very a process that they'll see every time we move to a new component. So like, what is it? Why is it important? What could it look like? And the standards.
Okay.
Then we give them an example because this is their first time assessing. We'll give them an example, and then they're gonna do it. So this is their chance to rate themselves, and they're just gonna do that.
You guys did a great job on making these notes really thorough.
Oh, thank you. But at the same time, if it's either too much or we need to change something, please speak up. You can do that. Cool. So the key here is they self-assess on all three at the same time.
Okay.
Because I think that's where we ran into some confusion for day 2.
Yes.
Went back and fixed it.
Yes.
So as we hit that on day one, I'll clarify up here. We won't call it personal work time unless it's their self-assessment time.
Okay, perfect. And then, oh man, I had a question. It'll come back to me. Sorry, I just lost it.
That's okay. No, you're good.
Oh, it's back. So their self-reflection, that's like you said, personal work time. Does that just live with them, or do they share that out or interact with anybody with it, or does it just live with them?
So it will live with them.
Okay.
At the very end of the day, so at the end of this section, they can use this rating, whatever they do here in their notes, to create their own action plan.
Perfect.
But it sticks with them. Yeah.
Got it.
That might be a good thing to add to the notes, actually, because then they might feel more comfortable.
That's what I was thinking, and that's what, yeah.
Good call. Thank you.
No.
Okay. I'll have them rate on all three components. Okay. Good deal. All right, so they do that. Are you good if we keep rolling?
Yes, yes.
Cool. So then there's just a bit of the review, and this ties right into right here. So this little arrow will fly in and say this first part is what we covered in CCI. So just a quick little review. Learning this our barbell. I think they've seen these exact slides before.
Okay.
So yes, our customers have to do with the standards and how we're meeting the standards. Here's a little bit about the standards. And then that question of, do your learning requirements align with the Missouri learning standards, which we can also adjust to say, or some of you might be working with the essential elements or the counseling standards, and that's fine too. What questions do you have in identifying and communicating those learning requirements? This may be something we want to spend some time on because our first systems checks data pieces, even though there's not a ton in there, some people are missing this step.
Okay.
So this might be something to kind of talk about. Good. So this is about surfacing questions and kind of making sure they're on the up and up.
Okay.
And just a couple of examples.
And you guys, you talked a little bit through the examples, right, in CCI?
Tons of examples, yes.
And you
Lots
talked
of
about
examples.
just what makes them, okay.
Yes. So I think that is something that, I'm glad you brought that up, because in TSP there are still some, but there are less examples because we're really relying on them to to bring the learning they've already had back to the table.
Sure.
So we do have, obviously, these ones have some picture cues. These ones are short and sweet, large, easy to see, good with visuals. So just some quick things to kind of point out, good on the visuals. We hit that one. Okay. And then just kind of pointing out how it falls here on that linkage diagram. And then they get to do another activity with the Jamboard.
Great.
Okay. So something that we can consider for day one, we had this discussion already for day two, and we opted to hide these slides.
Yes.
So yeah, so with the Jamboard, they're going to come up with their own ideas and put everything on the Jamboard, which we could then kind of talk through.
Right.
In this.
So, I'm sorry, Mary. So when you talk about, the Jamboard and talking through it, is that something where you like pull up the Jamboard, look at all the ideas and talk to the group, or are they sharing their ideas? What process have you used?
So for this particular Jamboard, the idea would be that there's the reflection question. And that they can have sometimes, so give 1 minute to jot down responses on a Post-it. That actually prompts me right here because this is just an individual thing. So we need to take this part out. Oh no, I'm sorry, we are leaving it in. 1 minute to think on their own on this part. 3 minutes to confer with their partner, this part. And then they can add their ideas to the Jamboard. Our thought was that they could even use pictures instead of just typing out their ideas. They could have pictures to kind of model what they were thinking, or they could choose to type it out just to spice it up a little bit and show another way to use the Jamboard.
Okay.
And then once they've done that, and they've, probably 3 to 5 minutes there, we would display the Jamboard for everyone to see, and then say, stand up if you currently do something that you see on the list. So kind of a way to start to get
Okay,
some
got it.
movement in there, whatever.
Got it. I see that on the notes here. Yep.
Yeah, so like stretch if you learn something new, and then sit down if you have awesome students and families.
Cool.
Hopefully everyone sits down. I hope. And then if they want to take a minute to put any of their notes, either in their book or on their learning log, they can do that too.
Great.
So all of that being said, these slides were in there when we inherited this presentation. We can choose to leave this next one in there. These would seem to be ideas that other past participants have had. I don't necessarily know that we need, I might advocate for hiding the slide so that facilitators can kind of see where people's thoughts were if it's something we want to bring to the table. I just don't want to undervalue the work of the team, of the participants in the seat that day.
I agree. I agree completely. And I think consistency's sake too. We talked about taking it out of day 2. And I think it makes sense. And you're right. I think it shows greater value to what the participants are coming up with that day.
So we're cool then maybe just to hide this one. As facilitators, we can review it beforehand to know kind of what pieces we might want to hit on if our participants don't. But that way we can still honor what they say.
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay.
And I apologize, Mary, that I think I'm asking some questions that are already in the notes. And I'm sorry, I didn't see some that haven't been all the way through it yet. So thanks for your patience with me.
No, keep doing that, please, because we made the notes forever ago and I don't have them all memorized. And so I don't remember what's on each one. So I'm glad you're asking questions. It forces me to go back and look. Okay, so then after the Jamboard, we would jump to this slide. And so as not to confuse anyone, they've already self-rated. So the purpose of this slide is to just say, we've kind of wrapped up talking about this first component. Now we're moving on to this second component. So I'm going to move this like we did on day 2 to say, we're moving on.
Perfect.
To the second component. And this is really where Adrienne England is going to take over.
Oh,
so please forgive me for kind of flying through some of these slides. We're going to be in communication with her in terms of how she's going to walk folks through this next section.
Cool.
But TSP and family engagement, lots of cool stuff. Eventually, I could see us putting things from Charting the Life course somewhere in here, but we're not.
That would be exciting.
I know, wouldn't it be exciting?
Yeah.
We'll get there. We'll get there. So, but okay, so she kind of leads us through that section. And then again, we're going to do the moving on thing right here. The third section.
That's helpful, Mary.
What?
Adding that text, I think you said you did that to day 2 as well. That's helpful.
I can see where it would be confusing, and I missed it the first time around. So kudos to everyone who takes a look at these.
I missed it too when we were reviewing it until that last time.
I know, isn't it crazy? You stare at it enough. Okay, so then we move to the last section where we monitor and report students as well as customer satisfaction. And this becomes, we call it a shoulder partner. I think, sorry, it's taking me a minute to go back through some of this. So I'm going to look at our time ordered agenda really quick to see if this is, oh my goodness, where did it go? Did I quit sharing?
Not yet.
Oops, sorry about that.
That's all right.
I don't know how that happened. Okay, that's funny. Okay. So according to, there it is, the time ordered agenda. Here. Oh my goodness, there we go, trying to catch up. Oh goodness, Danielle, I apologize. This went to day 2's time ordered agenda.
That's all right. I printed day 1's off, so I have it here. I know that doesn't help us as far as.
No,
looking at it
it's
together.
good. I was trying to find it quickly, but I don't think I'm going to real quick. For an under customer focus on the time ordered agenda, if you're looking at it,
Yes.
on that third section, we monitor and report student as well as customer satisfaction. Is Adrian's name next to that? I'm trying to remember if that was something that.
Monitoring customer satisfaction, is that what you said?
Yes.
Yes, Adrian's name is next to that.
Okay, that's why it wasn't ringing a bell right away. I was like, oh, I don't remember this activity. So this is an Adrian part. So she will kind of work her way through these slides. Again, we're going to be in contract with her to kind of see if there's anything we need to do to help support this section.
Okay.
Okay. But I was like, oh, okay, that made me feel a little bit better. I can't remember this. Okay. So what I would say, however, that would kind of fall back. So when Adrian's kind of done, and then it comes back to our team to kind of take back over, or she could lead this part as well, is I'm jumped down to slide 73, where it says review your systems, check data for customer focus, and then record an action step for each area on page 60. So page 60 actually looks a little something like this. And this is where we can prompt them to use their notes, use any of their new learning, use their self-assessment, whatever they want, to make like an actionable step. They can write for one action step, they can write a couple action steps. This is to write one for each area, but the example doesn't necessarily show that it has to be each area. So I might alter this to say for all applicable areas, or one or more area on page 60. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. And they have an example, which was good feedback from day one. They like those examples.
They do like those examples? Okay.
They do. So that's kind of nice that that's here for them for this first round. All right, and then they have some action planning time, which I think is about 10 minutes or so on the
Okay.
agenda.
I can check. Yeah, 10 minutes.
Perfect. So these are just ideas that they might choose to do. And then here are some of the resources that we've added to it. So they can go back and do that. And by the time they are done with that, we have a plus delta. And I think we're having them go back to the Jamboard just to make life simple and consistent. So they can add their pluses and add their deltas and then head to lunch.
Great.
Cool. All right. So are we good so far?
Yep, great.
Cool. All right. So when they get back from lunch, we kind of open it up with this idea of celebrations. And this is something that we need to be sure to put in the kick-up email. The announcement that we send before they come is that if they have anything, as they've implemented steps 1 through 8, like bring some samples, bring what you've done. Be ready to share and celebrate.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
And maybe I'm checking to see if maybe, do we revisit those plus deltas at all when they come back?
Oh, we do. Is there not a slide in here for that? Good call. Where is the slide? Okay.
I
Yes, we do. We do. I'm just going to put this. Thank you for catching that. Yep. We sure do. All right. I'll fix this in a minute. Thank you.
No. I can put it in there too. I just didn't know if I missed something or I wasn't sure.
Nope. I missed something, but yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you for that. So, okay. So yeah. So when they come back, we would open it with the idea of celebrations. This will actually take you to the celebration song. So that might be a fun way to welcome them back.
That's fun.
Whatever. And then people can just choose to share. We can just kind of spend, I don't know what's on the agenda, probably about 5 or so minutes. It's just celebrating what they've done.
Okay, great.
Cool.
Yeah.
Then we will go over the plus delta feedback that we will have added to after lunch.
Great.
Awesome. Thank you. And then we will dive into strategic planning. So you'll see this is a pretty similar, now that we've done it once, it's going to be a similar pattern throughout. So that what is it, why is it important, what does it look like, and the connections to EES. And then they rate themselves on all of the components. This stays personal work time because this is their time to actually rate the whole shebang. And then this is just showing that we're going to start on this first one right here.
Great.
To be perfectly honest, how do you feel about me? I'm going to combine these slides if that's okay, because they say the same thing.
Yep.
We don't need this one. I'm just going to hide it.
Yep.
We need this one.
And then,
There's no work time.
So this is, okay. So that is their personal work time where they're, yep, got it.
Yep. And this yellow arrow actually, I think, flies in present
Oh,
mode.
beautiful.
So yeah, as a presenter, we'll say work time, rate yourself. There's only 2 components. They'll rate themselves. And we click and it says, okay, so now we're going to start talking about this first one that we reviewed. And then we'll dive in.
Great.
Okay, so just a reminder of what a SMART goal is, and then some examples of the long-term goals from a couple different areas. Okay, so we kind of talk through those examples. Then they're going to do some table team time again, which would then result in a whip around.
Great.
So this is again like, what goals have you published and posted? How do you engage your students? This can be a stand and stretch while they're talking. So they're basically going to have kind of this open conversation, and then when we whip around, they're going to share either a sample goal that they have or some learning that came out of that conversation, which would take us into the next step, which is down here. This is our moving on because we've already done the word. I'll go back and delete these directions. Oops, because we don't need them. Okay. And so here we're taking a look at, I don't remember what this is. Oh, how students and staff are actively involved in developing these action plans. So this is all about looking at just different brainstorming sessions. This is like building a mission statement, giving them voice and choice, getting their opinions out there, and then kind of getting into surveys, which is a bigger piece. Okay. So again, just more examples of strategic action planning. This is a short video that, that folks can watch in terms of how students can be involved in that process, which is pretty cool.
And we're going to show that video, right? It's not just in there for them to view later, like we're going to show it.
Correct. Yes. Yep. Absolutely. And we can certainly offer, I mean, part of this is going to facilitate our choice here.
Yeah.
If they have the time to say like, okay, what things do you like? What questions do you have? You know, certainly take the time if that's a need that the facilitators see. But also if it's something that they kind of need to say like, jot your notes down, we're going to come back to that later, that would be okay too.
Got it.
All right. I did not spell that word right. Okay. All right, so there's that. And then that kind of leads into the idea of the ladder diagram. So as another opportunity for how to organize long-term planning.
So
This
Mary,
is more of a, go ahead. Yeah,
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No,
Would this be a quality tool we would add to the poster?
Yep, for sure. For sure. And even some of these examples up here, I feel like they reference like an affinity diagram, which is actually what I think is happening here.
Okay.
So it is getting voice and choice, but they're grouping like ideas. So like, yes, affinity we can add, ladder we can add, for sure.
Great.
So then there's the ladder. And then I feel like with the ladder diagram itself, this is obviously something they work far more in depthly with when they get to high performing teams. So this is just kind of an introduction of it. And here's kind of an example of what it could look like. And then this is just something kind of they can bookmark on pages 22 and 23. They can certainly bookmark those pages to help for some future learning if they want to.
Okay, great.
Cool, and that leads them into some table work time. So at this point we have that activity bank poster I think would come into a lot of play right here, because the idea is with the partner, talk about 3 different ways that you can give students voice and choice in action planning. And they might be able to then go to the Jamboard and prioritize their top 3.
Cool.
And that way we can just kind of see what's rising to the top. And then they can obviously like stand when you're done, like when your team is done, stand up, stretch, and then we'd have that little visual.
Cool.
I think we're opting to hide this slide again to honor the thoughts of the participants in this session, which after the Jamboard would lead them then into their action planning time.
Okay.
Cool. And then on 105, these are the resources, ideas, and then resources that we have, like how to create a survey, some of the photo galleries that we offered, things like that.
Perfect.
Cool.
Sounds good.
Okay, then off to a break. And then I think this is our last section for the day, which is the leadership section.
Perfect.
Cool, so same as before, same process. They rate themselves, personal work time. Yeah, they're getting started step. So just kind of a review of what we've already learned in terms of the mission statement as one way that leaders set the tone for the classroom. With some examples. There's that affinity again. Okay. So again, just some examples and then getting ready to move on then into the next section.
All right.
That honestly, I imagine that to be a pretty quick piece of the presentation because that's usually the one everybody gravitates to first. This is some new learning. Monitor and communicate class progress to students and families. So kind of guide them through here, guide them through some of the data collection pieces and what those visuals could still look like. There's your high school example. And we show those examples as to say you have the data, like that's kind of a piece that at this point we should be pretty consistent with. How could we share that data and communicate it out? And in these letters might be some ways or one method to do that. So then we have some sample newsletters. You can kind of highlight that classroom data is being shared, however they choose to describe it. Class Dojo seems to be something a lot of folks use. There is a quick teacher of a video of a teacher who's actually using Class Dojo, which could then open up to a whole group discussion.
Okay.
And I've had a few conversations with some other design team members about this one. So after the video, whole group discussion, what other tools and strategies have you found successful? And that we can maybe start charting those ideas on a piece of paper.
Okay.
Old presentations had slides like for the Remind app and a couple different tech things that I don't really know if they're even still around, if it's something SSD would promote. So if whatever they're using that comes from them, I mean, I'd be more than happy to have an open conversation.
Okay.
But we just wanted to be careful about things that like SSD says.
Got it.
Go do. Cool. Okay. So after the discussion, then it's a self-reflection time. Page 27 in their books. So this is them just to kind of think about what they're already using in terms of data.
Got it.
Measure their long-range goals and their own communication. We can ask for volunteers to share out. If we're short on time, we don't have to.
Great.
Cool. And then this is our moving on time, which goes back into the organizational best practices a little bit. Okay. I don't know what this puzzle and glue analogy is, so I'm not too sure, but that was some of the old notes. I'm just going to put a little not 2020 there. So people don't get concerned. Okay. So we just kind of reference those organizational best practices. There's kind of this idea of a self-assessment. So participants self-assess to the degree to which they're currently integrating these in their classroom. So that's on page 28 in their book. And then they can have some time to share with their table partner what they might do differently based on this assessment.
Cool.
And that leads into the action planning for this section.
Great.
Cool. And then more resources, of course. So like this would be the slide that I would say would stay up during that 10-minute
Gotcha.
time frame.
Yes.
Was
Gotcha.
my thinking. Does that match your thinking?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So after the action plan, they are, okay. So they're going to get a chance to look at the work that action planning that they've done then for the day. They should have 3 sections with some action steps in it. So they would take this time then to kind of self-prioritize 3 of them and share that with their table partner. So they're going to need a minute to choose their 3 first. Share that. So as they start to go through, sorry, I'm kind of okay. So this should lead us then into that larger section of the day. And I'm pretty sure on that time ordered agenda, we're at the big action planning part. Is that correct? Thank you for having that available.
Yes, like the end one.
Yes.
Yep.
Yep. So that's really where I might kind of firm up this slide a little bit, just to make that a little bit more clear. Because it looks like up here, they'll do their 10 minutes for leadership.
Right.
Then they'll prioritize their 3 and get ready for their big thing. I have a feeling we're missing a break slide.
I thought I saw one.
I apologize. I should. Oh, yep, you're right. We did. Yep, we're good. Okay. If people need a break at this point, they obviously can have it because they're going to walk. They're going to have this big chunk of time now. Okay. So they'll do their 10 minutes for that last section. They'll prioritize their 3 action steps. And now they get this larger chunk of time right here to really start to either create. They can certainly collaborate with others if they need to. This is their time to do their thing. They can talk to us. We can support them through whatever. I think we probably put about 30 to 40 minutes in. These are just ideas, but they can certainly do what they need to do during this time. And facilitators can adjust the time as needed.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. This note is not correct. Okay. So when they come back, we are going to do, goodness gracious, some of these, looks like we need to clean up a little bit of these notes here at the end. Okay, so we're going to do the final thought activity. So now that you've had a chance to work on your action steps, we're going to give you a chance to wrap things up with the final thought, anything that sticks out to you. Put it on a Post-it note, and then we'll share out just a couple of responses.
Perfect.
Going to wrap up the day. We're going to remind them of the outcomes. And again, that consensogram one, I just deleted that note if anybody saw that. It's because we're only going to do the consensogram at the end of the second day.
So Mary, will you pop back up to slide 137?
Sure.
So add your dot to the consensogram.
Thank you. Yeah, we're going to get rid of this stuff. This
Okay.
is going to
Sure.
happen on day 2. Thank you. I didn't catch that. Yep.
Perfect.
Yep. Because we're going to continue to add to that throughout day 2 as well. So
Perfect.
post
Great.
it. Thank you. Good catch. Good catch. Good catch. Okay, so these are just ideas that they can do for that 30 seconds. Although I'm getting my personal impression is that this slide needs to be cleaned up a little bit to make it more apparent that this is like their big time to work.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, a little more user friendly maybe.
Okay.
And I'm happy to go in and do it as well. It doesn't have to be a to-do for you. But I'm with you there. I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, perfect. We'll get that done. We'll get that done. That's not a big deal. But I do like the idea that they're going to prioritize their action steps prior to
Yes.
their big learning. Okay.
And so then basically we're giving them time to work on those then. Is that kind of the flow? Okay.
Tis the flow. So they'll do that. Then we'll do the final thought activity, remind them of the outcomes. And then we'll throw in the Kick Up Learning evaluation link. So we do the eval first, give them time to complete it, give them the code, and say, see ya on day 2.
Beautiful.
Good?
Yes.
Are there any questions for the sake of our recorded conversation?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, good.
It's been
Okay.
lovely.
It has been lovely. I'm going to go ahead and say stop.